the Chiefs. And welcome to this weekend edition of The Chiefs. With us, of course, are Ana Marie Pamintuan, the editor-in-chief of the Philippine Star, Lucy Cruz Valdez, and Robbie Alampay will be joining us in a few minutes. Ami, what's your top story tonight? I suppose it's the budget.
Yan na nga, yun inaabangan pa nga namin. Anyway, tapos na yung story, pasado na by 257 and 6 votes.
Yung 6 is against or abstain?
Second and third.
Yeah. The 6 votes are against or abstain?
I'm not sure eh. Makabayan block yon.
But anyway, it's 257. It's a clear, it's a clear passage. 257.
Kaya nga, saka solid eh. October 8 daw, papadala na nila yung soft copy sa Senate. And by November 2, ewan ko sa bagay, wala naman tayong undas ngayon. November 2 daw, the Senate will get the printed copy.
Okay,
so on track sila.
20. Pero kung November 2 pa yung printed copy, bakit 28 pa papadala yung ano?
Mag-aano sila sa by next week daw yung mga amendments, pero hindi daw papayagan ang mga congressmen.
Yun na naman.
Hindi, mga agency lang daw ang papayagan nila. So baka magkaroon ng discussions kasi maraming nagsasabi na medyo nalilitan yung iba dun sa health, di ba?
Yeah.
So baka magkaroon ng konti doon, saka baka maraming discussion din doon sa DPWH, of course. Kaya lang, that's part of build. Ewan ko kung mababawasan pa nila yun.
Yeah, but again, you have that strange circumstance of amending a bill after it's passed on third reading.
Sabi nila, pwede naman daw yun kasi naman agency amendments naman daw. And it's in line daw with the National Expenditure Program na pre-post ng Malacanang. So, align John doon sa kanilang gusto. So, meaning, hindi sa gusto ng mga congressmen. So, at least medyo bago yan. Of course, merong mga congressmen na hindi masaya doon. Ewan ko kung tingnan natin kung ano yung magiging budget sa health. Kasi health as one of the biggest, no? Ang sa kanila, PhilHealth, 17.3 billion. Yung universal healthcare, ewan ko kung, well, it's related to our topic tonight. So, yung universal healthcare, 203.1 billion. So, may breakdown kami. Yung PhilHealth, 17.3, pati yung PPE ng medical workers, 2.7 billion, pero yung sa vaccine, 2.5 nga lang. So,
and joining us is Robbie Alampay over there from Quezon City, also from 1U. Robbie.
Yes.
Magandang gabi po.
Budget din kayo, Robbie.
In budget, of course, there were questions also with regards to COVID, whether or not there's enough allocations even when there is a vaccine already available. So yan yung isa sa mga tinatanong. By one figure that I remember reading on the big story is parang ang estimate ni Congresswoman Stella Kimbo is something less than 4 million people. We can afford to inoculate people at parang less than 4 million people. Yun yung nakaalat na budget. So I don't know exactly kung ano kinatapusan ng mga usapan, but those are the kinds of questions that were being raised during the proceedings.
Yung sa testing, 1 billion. But anyway, as in the past, yung education, pinakamalaki pa rin siya, no? Biggest, that's in the Constitution naman.
So they want to increase the appropriations for several departments over and above that recommended by the executive dun sa expenditure program.
Pwede pang mag-amend yung siguro pwede pang mag-appeal yung ibang department kasi like DOST, di ba? Baka humingi pa yun ng bigger budget or yun nga, sabi ko, DPWH, dahil may kontrobersya, baka medyo lumit ng konti. So medyo kagalaw-galaw yung funding. So, hindi natin alam. Anyway, magbabay campus siya. Ewan ko yung sa health, kung may coverage, kasi meron na tayong National Mental Health Program, di ba?
Yeah.
So, ewan ko kung, hindi ko alam kung anong allotment for that, kung meron man. Kasi yun ang hinihingi nung natin eh. Nagsisegue na ako.
I've always wondered. Always wondered about that. Whenever Congress increases the budget for departments over and above that recommended dun sa expenditure
Hmm.
program, kasi well, I looked it up. Dun sa Article 6, Section 25 ng Constitution, Congress cannot increase appropriations
For
beyond that
department.
recommended by the President through the expenditure
Ah.
program.
Pero
That's-
karamihan naman niliitan eh. Karamihan nagka-cuts, di ba?
karamihan
So,
kinat karamihan kinat ng DBM.
kaya
Tapos
nga.
ini-increase ng Congress.
Oo. Yan
okay.
yung sinasabi, yan yung explain kahapon ni Congresswoman, di ba? Congresswoman Kimbo, that when they express confusion as they put it, paano nangyari yun? Na napakababa ng allocation para dito. It really starts with the budgeting according to the NEP by the executive, by the DBM. Pagkatapos yun, pagdating sa kanila, basically the work was really saying, parang kulang to, kailangan
Oh,
dagdagan.
diba? Pero nga, it's specific in the Constitution. It's Article 6, Section 25. Congress may not increase the appropriations recommended by the President for the operation of the government as specified in the budget. So technically, it's also in the administrative code. But anyway,
Sa department.
I don't want to be the
Anyway.
one to pop the bubble
Yan.
or the balloon. So,
Hindi, yun na nga.
kasi
Alam
they've
mo
been
yung
doing it for several years.
Hindi ko nga alam yung sa mental health nga, yun tinatanong ko, yun ang hinahanap ko eh. Wala pa tayo nung mga anong yun eh. So, siguro,
Okay, I can sense the segue coming in. Okay.
Yan na.
Okay, as we said in the introduction, kanina, we are going to our theme for tonight is going to be mental health issues. Something that we've talked about several months ago na rin during the height of the COVID-19, and now going to the 7th month or going to the 8th month actually of COVID-19. It's good that we talk about this again. Our first guest for tonight is Jean Goulbourn, mental health advocate, of course, and the founder of the Natasha Goulbourn Foundation. Ma'am Jean, good evening po, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Hi, Ed.
Good evening.
Hello. Hi, Robbie.
Hello.
Ed,
Good
and
evening.
Ami.
Good evening.
Good evening po.
Good evening. Thank you for having me again.
Yes, ma'am. I
And,
think the last time we had you here was around June, mid-June. That was
Yes.
3 months into the pandemic already. And I
Yes.
do remember you mentioned nag-increase significantly, mga 200 plus 220%.
200%.
220% increase
220%,
ng
yes.
ng calls nyo sa inyong Hope line, and that was only 3 months
Yes.
into the pandemic. Now we're looking at going to the
Yes.
8th month already. How are the numbers looking like?
Yes. Okay. For the past 2.5 months, we dropped by about 15%.
Wow.
And I think the drop is because about 15% drop. And I think it's because a lot of people are going back. You know, it's not anymore the strict lockdown. They're going back to work. I can see that the traffic is getting a bit heavy.
Oh yeah.
And maybe it eased up the feeling of isolation and the feeling of desperation. But Ed, and there's something that's very interesting that has come up. I would like to share with you, if I could, that I was just saying earlier that there's too much bad news. But I wanted to say good news to all of you that if we just invest, I mean, my head was spinning when you were talking about budget. I'm so sorry. I mean, nahihilo ako sa mga numbers na nasasabi ninyo. Budget
Kami
ng
rin po.
Congress,
Not to worry, kami rin po.
budget ng National Mental Health. Parang ako as a citizen, an advocate working for mental health, parang hindi ko nakikita ang cascading of the money na nafe-feel ko yung impact sa population. So for instance, I'm exposed to people who work in the farms. I go to Batangas, my friend has a farm. I talk to the people. I talk to the simple farmer. I talk to my bantay in the village in Nasugbu. I ask, what are the new what can you get going to your barangay kapitan and asking for help if somebody needs help, because he was telling me that there were 7 suicides in Nasugbu in a certain community, 7, and that happened very recently, around February, March. and the first incident was October of last year. So he begged me, Ma'am, pwede pong matulungan yung kapitbahay namin. And so I got very curious. So I wanted to know, ay ma'am, wala naman kaming makukuha sa ospital. Wala talaga. Kaya nagpakamatay na lang yung 7. So I was very shocked. And I'm still in that process of wanting to help them. But the programs that I have, and I wanted to report the good news, is that for 3 years, we had 0 suicide in Bicol University. We went there in 2016, and believe it or not, the amount of money, part of that was part of the DOH small package of 3.5 million that was given for Natasha Goulbourn Foundation to do really a campaign on the awareness. Believe it or not, we had 7,800 participants in Legazpi, and 3,000 were DepEd, students and teachers. And Bicol University supplied us with about 4,000 students with University of Santo Tomas. It used to be known as Aquinas. Believe it or not, we had 7,800 participants. The mayor put in a lot of freebies. So more or less, the expense was about 6.3 million, but we had 7,800 participants, and the effect was fantastic. So 3.5 million can go a long way, really a long way into the prevention program. So I'm very excited to tell you that an investment on a prevention program, which is 5 to 12 days of intensive training of teachers, guidance counselors, especially of public schools, could really, really, really help millions of students.
Can
So
you
when I called,
carry, ma'am, can you carry that out? I mean, in these current days, I mean, you're talking about a multi-year program in the
yes,
former Aquinas and sa Bicol. But
yes.
now, I mean, I think the message is clear. We need to train more people. Can you carry out quick and emergency trainings in this current situation where people are
Yes,
still hesitant to go out?
it can be done by Zoom, but there's a
Hmm.
disadvantage. So I want to tell you what this conversation I had first, and then I'll go into the expenses of the blended learning and Zoom. And what happened is very interesting. For 3 years, 2017, 2018, 2019, until March of this year, 2020, Bicol University, with almost 20,000 students, had not one single suicide.
Hmm.
So it had a 0 suicide. And so when 5 of my friends who are heads of NGOs heard about that, they asked me, Jean, why don't you ever talk about that in your interview? And I just said, I want to be very sure that my program can impact 3 more schools. So I talked to 3 colleges to try the program so I could do more pilot tests. Well, today, sad to say, I want to report something sad. There were more than 5 that was on high risk and perhaps tried to attempt with around ideations of suicide. And this happened to 15 and 14-year-olds. Now, these are the freshmen that went back to school the past 3 weeks, and they just couldn't adjust to the blended learning.
Hmm.
So this is going to cause our country a tremendous problem of the
Hmm.
youth
Hmm.
taking their lives. And so thank you for guesting me tonight,
So
because I
you're
said I
saying.
would bring that up.
Mhm. So what you're saying is we're bracing, and that is certainly the theme for the past 2-3 weeks. People and students in
Yes.
particular, our youngsters going back to school. You're saying we need to brace for the impact that will have because really we've been hearing about the problems of people getting online. They're not really sure if they're getting the kind of education, or for that matter, just the access to education that
Yes.
people need. On the other hand, WHO has said it's important to reopen schools, bring back some normalcy and some routine. Talk a
Yes.
bit more about what we're anticipating, both on how going back to school might serve for the good, for the mental health and the routine of our youngsters. But as you said, about what we should be anticipating by way of the
Yes.
stress and anxiety.
Yes. Well, 10 days ago, if you look at the news, we just lost a 14-year-old, I think 14 or 13, to suicide in Bohol. Because the teacher, apparently, this is the story on the news. I haven't had the chance to call or investigate because I just don't have time. My advocacy is training teachers, training guidance counselors. That's what I wish to do. And I asked somebody from the DepEd, and they said it wasn't the total story. But the story that appeared in the news is that there was no internet, no Wi-Fi for more than 28 hours. And the child, the 12, 13, or 14, could not deliver his homework on time. And the teacher refused to accept the homework. I think it was a day or 1.5 day or 2 days late because there was no Wi-Fi. And this happened in Bohol. But I would like to check that out because I don't know the total story. It appeared in all the news, in Inquirer, it appeared. So I read it thoroughly. But it is scary because I just found out 3 hours ago before this because I called up Bicol University. I talked to Benji Nebres, the Dean of Student Affairs. He is a fantastic guy, very sensitive, a sociologist. And he explained to me, and this is how he said it: technology has been a barrier in human connection. And this has affected the new freshmen coming in. They're coming from freshmen coming in from public school, coming into a state university, and getting so overwhelmed. First, the fear of COVID. Number two, financial. Can they afford a computer? The third is the what they have to deliver. Apparently, it hasn't gone any less. The deliverables. And the teachers, I didn't know, cannot get their salary until they deliver all the deliverables and those expectations that are coming from the standard that has been imposed by, let's say, in totality, let's say DepEd or CHED. I don't know that, but that was what was told to me. I
Yes,
was
ma'am.
completely
But
shocked
but
that
but
a
you did say a
salary
while
of
ago that you said a while ago, ma'am, that you heard about five freshmen or sophomores,
more or less they're in
more or
the
less.
more or
Just
less
to give
they
us an idea,
are
po.
in high
Just to give
risk,
us an Opo, just to
just
give us
in
an idea
high
po,
risk.
you're talking about one school, you're talking about the one province, one town, or
Only one school. One school.
only in one school.
Yes, only one school. They are taking care, and the guidance counselors are up until 3:34 in the morning.
Yeah.
There
I,
are about yes. Go ahead.
Ma'am, I was going to ask. I mean, we've been covering the setup for the teachers in general and the school administrators. To an extent, we've been talking about parents under this online distance learning setup. What is the setup for guidance counselors?
Well, they are supposed to counsel, and I've met so many with the biggest, beautiful heart that they even eat their lunch while counseling the young people. I have in my panel about 17 um, psychologists and guidance counselors, and I'm telling you, they're getting no rest at all. because
But
the phone calls coming in.
you're talking about your organization or your programs, but and that was to my question. In schools in general, do we? I mean, what is the setup for? We talk about distance learning and teaching. What about distance guidance counseling? I mean, is that built into how we reopened our
I've
public school
not
system?
I've not checked with all the schools except for one particular school. And then the guidance counselors are open on a Zoom or a
Mm.
FaceTime. And
Mm.
in our Hope line, so now they've dispersed the phone number of Hope line. So most of our callers, we anticipate this. The past 3 weeks, we've been getting calls from students saying that they can't afford the laptop. Their parents have no job, little problems like that. But to a student, somebody of 10 years old and 14 years old, this means a lot. Like, for instance, for us, Natasha Goulbourn Foundation, we have worked from Brother Armin Luistro. He gave us a contract to do for the curriculum grade 4 to 12. I thought that was very advanced thinking of Brother Armin Luistro. So when Brother left, I have now, it's my 4th year, and it's my 3.5 years of changing the program. We were asked to change. No service charge, no fee. My foundation raised money, and I personally put in my own cash. Um, Now that we're ready to roll, if we were ready to roll, they asked the question, did you go through a bidding? And I said, why do I have to go through a bidding? This was a request under another secretary then, and we've done the program. Please, I'm begging you all the USECs, please put it online, please. So when you're talking about the budget, for an 18-hour, all I needed for the training is a very small amount, nothing, a drop in the bucket. That has been under question for the past 3.5 months. So I don't know. I wish that I've gotten sponsorship, and there was one very generous company who has supported us all throughout, and Globe. They were able to help us for grade 10, 11, and 12. It's not a big amount. But I'm just telling you that mental health holds a stigma to a few companies, that they don't really feel like the image of their company has to be attached to a mental health advocacy. And the government, I hope that President Duterte hears this, and the MH law, I don't see the impact. I asked a company that asked for my help, can you donate 200 pesos for every head of your 16,000 employees? And we can do a beautiful program, 3 webinars for you. They found the 200 pesos per head, 6 hours webinar, expensive. So now that you're talking about budget, Amy, my head is reeling around. You're talking billions. I'm just talking of 450,000 pesos.
Siguro if
That
you
could,
emphasize the impact on students, you began talking about students.
yes,
I just want to clarify. You're getting calls from students who are out of school who are
we
unable.
are,
There are about 2 million who were unable to enroll, or are you
we,
getting from people who are enrolled but still lack gadgets?
both,
Both.
both. Because I've not done a research. We just clump our callers into groups. You
Mhm.
know, how many percent this month, how many were youth. Youth means 10 years old to 14 years old. That means young teenagers. And then we clump our data into 15 to 19 years old. That's how we do the data that I gather. But I think it's time for me now. I'm changing the way that we gather the data from Hopeline because the schools were, there are about 9 schools that I gave really beautiful seminars last year. They're the ones that are issuing out the Hopeline number because their guidance counselors can no longer. Now, those who are calling for help are those that are going to public schools. They cannot afford. They're talking about their Wi-Fi. They're talking about not being able to afford laptop. And even my helper already asked us for 2 laptops for 2 children.
Are they
One
talking
is
about
16.
suicidal thoughts?
The
Is
ideation
anyone
stuff,
is anyone mentioning it?
oh yes. The ones who
They
call the
are.
Hope Line, yes.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
They
And do
you
you
know
get
the
calls from parents as well? Parents of
parents,
students
yes. Yes.
as well.
They don't understand the mood swings because
Uh-huh.
it's a step by step before a child or a 14-year-old decides to take his or her life. It's
Mhm.
step by step. First, the child loses his energy to eat. The child is listless. The child cries. Or the child isolates himself. Or the child throws away his mobile phone because in frustration and in sadness. So there is sometimes a temper tantrum, sometimes just an acceptance, but a very hopeless acceptance of a situation. So there are many symptoms that even parents don't know. So I requested 5 doctors to come up with a manual for parents and what to do and how to look at signs. And so that's what we're doing now. And if anyone's listening and they have already a book for parenting in the COVID season, I would just love to have it so I don't have to look for sponsorship to start from scratch, you know. So the COVID season has really changed the whole lifestyle and the lives of our people. And they don't feel secure and safe that they can look at someone and run for help. They feel very insecure. The guidelines are not clear on the medical area, and there's a lot. I think there can be more compassion from the policymakers of the high deliverables, the high standard of deliverables that the children have to submit. At least for this year, it's a big transition. So I
Siguro we
don't know.
siguro
Yes.
we can remind the people again how to get in touch with Hopeline because mukhang you're expecting still a lot of trouble with the pandemic persisting, no? Maybe we can
Actually,
flash the numbers of Hopeline.
thank you. But actually, Amy, I also called up my consultant from New York, Dr. Brian Hutchison, and
Mhm.
I asked him also how it was in the United States.
Yes.
But if you look at the news on mental health in the United States, it's already doubled the
Yes,
high
even
risk
worse.
for suicide, but they're expecting triple by first quarter of 2021. It's
Mhm.
scary. It's really scary. And the MH law of our country, I don't see the companies, the corporations doing something. And I think 45-minute awareness that big time companies, billionaires ask from me, I say no. I can't do 45 minutes. You're just opening, you know, you're just cracking the tip of the iceberg. But normally, a very healthy mental health activity for a corporation, they must put aside no less than 12 hours at least to teach a core group, the HR department, and a core group that passes the test, that they have to pass the test, that there is no, that the persons that are going to become peer counselors should be strong, resilient enough to undergo a lot of counseling services, because they are not really, they don't have the degree to take up counseling.
Okay.
They don't have.
Ma'am,
If
baka you'd like to
someone
invite
wants
them.
to, yeah. Yeah,
How
if
did they
someone
get in
wants
touch
to
with you
contribute,
with your hope line? We can we can flash your numbers again, but
yeah, the
maybe you'd
number.
like to invite them to.
I gave it, yes, I gave it to Marian, and she gave it to your technical people,
Okay. Yeah.
and it's all there. And this is, Globe has supported us for 9 years, and I'm very happy to say that Mr. Ernest Koo gave us 11 extra trunk lines, and we have 6 doctors on standby for high risk. And for the first 30 minutes, the callers don't have to pay any amount of money.
Okay.
So those are from the purity of generosity, purity of the heart of these doctors that have volunteered to say yes to the high risk calls. But beyond the high risk calls, I'm calling on the help of the LGU. The mayors with their budget, maybe they can put aside 5% or 10% for mental health assessment clinics, training the social workers. We can train the social workers to understand the depression that's going on amongst the youth. We can specialize them, and I can get other schools to join with us. I'm just giving innovative ideas, creative ideas. I'm a fashion designer. I'm not, I did take up psychology. That's my major, and investigative journalism. That's what my major was in college. But
Okay.
I know it can be done. I know it can be done, Amy, Robbie, and Ed. It can be done if each
Okay.
of us just put on, lean a little forward, and kalabitin natin si Mayor, kalabitin natin si Senador. Sir, gusto naman namin makita yung concrete na nagagamit sa mga budget na pinag-uusapan natin. Dapat maging concrete. It has to be really concretized. There has to be assessment center, and there has to be a 24-hour emergency clinic, not inside the hospital. No, the hospitals are so busy with COVID. We don't need a
Yeah.
hospital.
Opo. It has to be separate.
You know.
Well, ma'am,
Okay.
thank you very much po for what you're doing. I'm sure, I'm
Yes.
certain everybody appreciates it, and hopefully with this episode, people will appreciate it more and get in touch with your organization.
Ed,
Ma'am,
meron
yes,
na nga,
ma'am.
meron na nga akong Ed sana na 10 piso mula sa for the 104 million. Sana pag nagkaroon tayo ng 1 million, mapapansin ng mga gustong magpakamatay ay marami pa rin pala nagmamahal sa akin. So I think it will help a lot. It's not about the budget from Senate or Congress. I don't know where it will go, but amongst ourselves, 10 piso will help a lot. And I can add 10 more responders. So I really need to add. But I need the numbers from the people na matanggal ang stigma. Yun lang. So, nagpapasalamat po ako na I was given a platform to speak. I don't mean anything wrong. I just want all of us to help each other. Yun
Yes,
lang.
ma'am. Thank you,
Hindi
ma'am.
naman ako nagre-reklamo.
Yes, ma'am.
Nagsasabi
We
lang
understand
ako,
po.
sana
Maraming-
naman urgent. Salamat po.
Ayun,
Salamat.
10 piso lang.
Good luck.
Nasa load lang yan. Kayang-kaya na yan, di ba? So, kayang-kaya ng mga tao yan.
Okay.
Ma'am, maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat po.
Jean
Thank
Goulbourn
you.
ng Natasha
Thank
Goulbourn
you.
Foundation. Ma'am, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, we'll just go into a break. Please stay with us.
Welcome back to the Chiefs. We are now in the final stage of our conversation. And now we'd like to welcome Philippine Psychological Association Fellow, Dr. Joan Rifareal. Dr. Rifareal is also a faculty member of the Ateneo de Manila University School of Public Health, as well as the Residency Training Officer of the Veterans Memorial Medical Center, Department of Psychiatry. Good evening, Doctor. Welcome po
Good
to the
evening.
Good evening
Yes,
po.
good evening, Ma'am Amy. Good evening,
Good
Sir
evening
Ed
po.
and Sir Robbie. Good evening po. Maraming salamat for inviting me. I
Thank you
am
for joining us.
representing the Philippine Psychiatric Association po.
Philippine
Oh,
Hmm.
Philippine
Psychiatric.
Psychiatric Association.
Yes
Oh,
po.
akala
Thank
ko
you po kasi
Psychological
po.
Association.
Yeah,
Philippine
last
Psychiatric. Tama yan.
last Saturday po kasi we celebrated the World Mental Health Day. And
Okay.
this week, since simula Ma'am Amy nung Sunday until October 17, we are also celebrating in the Philippines the National Mental Health Week. So really, we are,
Tama-tama
giving,
po siya.
tamang-tama, yes. Opo.
Doctor, before the pandemic, we were talking already about the implementing rules for the national mental health law. Finally, nalabas eh. Pero bigla
Yes
nagkaroon ng pandemic. Ang sabi ng mga tumutulong sa mga hotlines, sa mga suicide hotlines, mental health hotlines, lalo daw dumami yung problema. How was life changed for the psychiatrists of the Philippines? I know there are so few of you. Pero ano po yung pagbabago ngayon with the pandemic, with the national mental health law in place?
Yes po, during this pandemic, we know, Ma'am Amy, na talagang it's really parang ang daming uncertainties, a lot of uncertainties during this time. And pag meron kasi pong uncertainty, there really is that sense na nawawalan tayo ng control over a lot of things. And when this happens, when we lose control over a lot of things, talaga nakakaroon po ng symptoms of anxiety, worry, pangamba, depression, distress, trauma. And so, personally ako talagang in the recent months and weeks talagang dumadami po ang the consultations because of all of these anxieties and worry. And usually po, I mean from the data din po presented by the National Center for Mental Health, there was also an increase in the number of calls that they had from pre-pandemic na medyo less than 100 to now it's more than 100 calls a day. So really po talagang it's really good po na meron tayo mga ganitong platforms for us to be able to raise awareness that help is available.
Hey, Doc, of course, we're putting everything right now. The big discussion is about COVID and how COVID is impacting everybody's mental health. We talk about anxiety, we talk about uncertainties. But what are the specific themes and concerns na napapansin nyo people come to you for now?
Yes, Sir Robbie, usually po, the fear center on the fear really of acquiring the virus, of being infected, isa po yun. And that's why usually ang mga the more at risk for these types of fears are the frontliners. So ang dami po na dumudulog sa amin na mga frontliners who have been feeling or having all of these fears of being infected or of maybe not being infected but bringing the virus to their homes, lalo na yung may mga pamilya, may mga anak. Another is that we know that there is this current global financial crisis going on. So yun din po ang isa sa mga concerns ngayon, the rates of unemployment is high or marami pong nagda-downsize na companies, marami pong nawala ng trabaho. So the financial uncertainty also. Also another as we are transitioning now to this new platform, new online form of classes as well as work from home, ito din po yung iba, ito din ang nagiging reason for them to have that feeling of uncertainty or of fear and worry about being able to navigate through this new platforms now. Pati mga bata are also affected, and I also get mga concerns. So I hear concerns about those who are working from home. Ang concern naman po is the loss of boundary between the personal and professional po na work-life balance because we do the work now in the confines of our own personal spaces at home. So marami po, iba-iba. And ang isang concern din po kasi is what worked before na coping skills or coping strategies. For example, kahit na we were so stressed before sa trabaho, there were times no, nababawasan ng stress after work because we were able to watch movies, for example, after a long day of work, or pwedeng nagkikita-kita sa mall, window shop, etc., getting dinner sabay-sabay with colleagues. But now kasi po, we are not able to do that anymore, no, temporarily. And that's why what worked before may not be helpful now. And so we really need to be more creative now as to how to navigate through this transition to the new normal. So we need to be creative as well in terms of looking for some coping strategies for us to maintain a positive mindset during this pandemic.
But
Ma'am,
give us,
as you mentioned kanina, there's a new variable nga na in the last 12 days we've had the opening of classes, blended learning. There's additional stress
Yes.
on everybody from students to parents, and of course especially that I can imagine the teachers are having such a hard time.
Yeah, lahat talaga, Sir
Yes,
Ed.
ma'am. And I think you're also a teacher, di ba? You're also a teacher yourself, eh. I'm
Yes.
wondering lang, I'm wondering lang, do we have any numbers this early? Do we have any indicators this early kung gaano kalaking impact nitong the blended learning opening of classes on everybody, or maybe if you want to zoom in to specific sectors like the students, the teachers, and so on the line.
In terms of numbers, Sir Ed, currently we do not have those figures yet. I don't know. I'm not sure if maybe DepEd would have numbers about this, but from personally lang, no, from those who have been consulting me about this, talagang medyo there have been a lot. Advise them to really to maintain that sense of normalcy pa rin sana, set a daily routine because it can be really helpful if we set a schedule, daily routine for those who work from home. Start early, habang tulog pa ang mga anak nila, start with their work, and then maybe when their kids are awake na, then that's a time that they can also help their kids with the online classes. And then of course, don't forget, we also need to take good care of ourselves, di ba? Kasi if we take good care of ourselves, then definitely we can take good care of those under our care, our children, our families, etc., our colleagues, no, and co-teachers.
Doctor, tumataas ang stress levels during the pandemic. Kumusta naman yung capacity natin for dealing with all these mental health problems? Nadadagdagan ba? Kasi alam namin kulang na kulang nga yung mga psychiatrists, mga psychologists, pati yung mga mental health workers, kulang na kulang. Kumusta na yung natin, yung manpower, yung resources?
I agree, Ma'am Amy. Talagang kami in the Philippine Psychiatric Association, currently there are siguro mga 500 to 600 only of us. But of course, we work hand in hand with everyone, with all of the yung mga organizations and groups, with the psychologists, kasama namin, mga social workers, etc. But what's good now is that we do our best, diba, to reach to as many as possible. No? We give talks, and mas maganda na ngayon with the technology, advent of technology, we can reach even yung mga nasa mga probinsya without access to psychiatrists or psychologists. We are able to raise mental health awareness and help them in terms of navigating through this difficult time by having all of these mga caravans, no? Mental health awareness caravans.
I mean, Doc, I think, in reality is for Filipinos, may hesitation pa, may stigma even in talking to a psychiatrist or a psychologist. And I think one barrier is people literally don't know. Ano ba to? What is it like to talk to a psychologist? What is it like to talk to a psychiatrist and approach them? Alam natin that there are now more mga remote distance consultations going on. If somebody were to try it and to reach out to you, how does it usually go? Itong mga distance consultation, ano bang mga tinatanong niya? Ano ba yung pinag-uusapan? Maybe give us an idea na, how it goes, and maybe that can lower the barrier a bit for people.
Yes. So Robbie, that's very important kasi nga we want to fight the stigma, lessen the stigma, fight the stigma, and this is also one way of course, educating and raising awareness that it's okay to seek help, to talk to someone, to talk to a mental health professional whenever we feel, no, na parang meron ng effect ang ating mga symptoms felt if it has an effect already on our functionality. Yun naman talaga ang mga red flags na for us to uh, red flags which would point us or lead us to seek help already. Functional impairment when there is already mga absences from work, from school, and of course, if the symptoms persist, tumatagal siya, usually we give it a timeline of 2 weeks na tuloy-tuloy. Nahirap matulog, walang gana sa pagkain, nawawala ng pag-asa. And of course, we need to prevent that for someone to feel hopeless to the point of thinking about self-harm or threat to oneself or others. So, mas maganda if they talk to someone when they feel na they have these red flags. Huwag matakot kasi always we always make sure and we reassure them that when they talk to someone, to a mental health professional, it's always confidential. It's always confidential. Privacy is protected, and it's always an assessment. No? The first meeting is always an assessment. We ask them kung ano ang mga simptomas, ano ang mga nararamdaman nila in the past few days, in the past few weeks, as well as we look into some of the factors which may have caused for those symptoms to come about. So para ma-address din natin yon when we do our plan for the treatment, no, or management. We always look at it, lahat naman po, no, be it anxiety, depression, we always look at it from a biopsychosocial perspective, meaning we look at the biological factors. For example, meron bang any use, for example, of any substances na which can affect one's mood, for example, no? And psychologically, we also look into an individual's coping skills kasi baka naman it's a normal stress. It's a normal stress reaction but kailangan lang i-enhance or strengthen ang coping skills of that person. And social factors is very important, which means that we also evaluate no, kung kamusta ang social support, family support, support from friends, etc. of the person who are going through all of these symptoms of anxiety and depression.
Doctor, itong pandemic has forced people to go into an unnatural situation where you have to be cooped up at home, you stay away from colleagues, from classmates. May mga nadala na ba sa attention ninyo about mental health issues arising from the need to isolate or the need to keep a physical distance from all your friends?
Yes. In fact, Ma'am Amy, studies have shown that when one is on self-isolation, especially if it's mandatory na 2 weeks, di ba? There was that yung mandatory 2 weeks quarantine or self-isolation, or for those of us who are living on their own, kung meron silang own apartments, for example, and the families are in the provinces, studies have shown that when one is in isolation or self-isolated, there is a higher risk for this individual to feel the symptoms of anxiety, depression, distress, loneliness, or even having those thoughts of self-harm. Kasi nga, mag-isa lang. And it's really very important. That's why we emphasize na even if we are maintaining this physical distancing now, no? I mean, physically, we need to be distant by 6 feet away, di ba, from the person next to us. But it's always important that we remain socially connected. Kaya lagi namin paalala yun, especially for those who are living alone or for those in quarantine. Please make sure that you are socially connected to your friends. You can always message, text your friends, drop a line or two. Pwedeng mag-video calls now with the technology. Pwedeng mag-party. I mean, e-party, di ba? If you need to celebrate an event kasama mga pamilya natin, we can always do that now through mga ganito, video platforms, mga Zoom platforms, other types of platforms. So social connectedness is really very important. Kasi kasama talaga yan siya sa triangle of health. Na? If we remember the definition of health from the World Health Organization, when we say health, it should be holistic. So physically, we need to be physically fit, di ba? And mentally or emotionally and socially. So kailangan ma-address natin itong tatlo when we say health.
Ay, doktor, na-intriga ako doon sa sinabi nyo, no, na biopsychosocial parate ang approach. Now, ironically, we've actually spent a lot of time talking about the psychosocial aspects. We assume that this is the one that is more technical, na hindi, it's more nebulous to people. Pero yung bio side, actually, ang hindi namin napapag-usapan masyado. What are the biological and biochemical things that are actually part of our everyday life, whether it's just drinking more coffee or sleeping a lot or sleeping less? What are the little things that we do to our bodies in the current routines na hindi natin naiisip na, huy, baka yan may epekto sa psychosocial aspect? Ay, what are the little things that we do at home habang naka-lockdown that
Yes.
maybe we can also pay attention to?
Yes, Sir Robbie. Definitely, we really need to give equal importance to our physical health and well-being, so the biological aspect of it. Number one, we have mga endogenous na hormones and neurotransmitters which we can enhance to make us feel good, give us better mood, and make us feel happy. Number one, isa sa mga endogenous, meaning it's within us and we need to strengthen it, boost it, is the endorphins, which are the happy hormones. And we can get this from physical activity.
By eating
Physical.
chocolate.
Eating chocolates.
Iba pa yun. Iba pa yun, Mag-Amy. We will go to that later. But the endorphins po, we can get this from physical activity. So any form of physical activity, exercise, kahit kung nasa bahay, lalo na yung mga senior citizens that they cannot go out, stretching, galaw-galaw, kasi it can boost that Zumba, yes, or yoga, stretching. It can boost the levels of endorphins, the happy hormones, as well as boost the circulation of blood circulation, especially circulation of blood to our brain, to help with our cognitive processes, makes us feel alert, awake, enthusiastic. So yun yung isa. No? Another is serotonin is also very important. As mentioned, kanina my Ma'am Amy, there are food. No? This is also one of the hormones that which make us feel good and happy. It's available, or we can get it from some of the food that we eat. Like, as mentioned by Ma'am Amy kanina, dark. Ma'am Amy,
Dark, yes.
dark. Oh, dark chocolate, not just the white chocolate kasi nakakataba yun. Not just the white chocolate or it should be 70% or higher. So yun, ang serotonin. We can also get that from fruits, like banana. They are good sources of serotonin, and avocados. And fish.
Okay.
Fish with the omega-3. And ang isa pa din is one of the other hormones which is also very important, which gives us pleasure, which makes us enjoy life, is dopamine. And itong dopamine, we get this when we eat, when we exercise, parang pareho din siya, no? So we can also get this from doing things which make us feel good or happy. For example, find a stress outlet na pag ginagawa natin yon, we feel good and happy. Yung iba, they are during this time of work from home or quarantine, sa bahay natin tayo, they rediscover talents or skills na somehow baka noon they forgot that they were also good pala about it, like playing musical instruments, painting, cooking, baking. Ang dami ngayon na they are able to come up with all of these magnificent na mga yung mga products nila, and then they post it online, and this gives them more it helps to boost their self-esteem, self-accomplishment. Merong bago ngayon yung raising plants, di ba? And studies have shown that
Mga plantita.
plantita. And studies have shown that it is also good because it gives purpose and meaning to our lives. Kasi we are taking care of our living organisms And when we are able to do that, naalagaan natin sila. So it also gives us that
What about,
sense of
ma'am, sa bio pa rin, pag-awayin lang natin, kape versus tsaa, because I've been getting so many different, I mean, what would you recommend? And for that matter, nabanggit nyo kanina, dark chocolate kasi nakakataba kung ano. What about sugar? Is sugar just, and carbohydrate for that matter, is that just about gaining weight, or does that have, does sugar and carbohydrates have impact on our mental well-being as well? But umpisahan natin sa kape versus tsaa.
Green
coffee.
tea.
And what we generally advise is to avoid anything black para so as not to affect our pattern of sleeping kasi lahat po sila it can affect our sleeping patterns, anything black or dark colored such as coffee, tsaa, even soft drinks and other form mga Milo basta mga ganon mga drinks na which are dark in color kasi they have the caffeine content na which may affect our time of sleep, etc. But again, ako naman, pag talagang if we need to take it, take it in the morning para paggabi, hindi tayo masyadong gising, no? And it may affect our sleeping patterns sa gabi. So generally, we avoid those. And sugar naman, in terms of sugar, carbohydrates, find the balance, limit it, everything in moderation. And studies have shown na kailangan we get enough sleep because sleep deprivation, in fact, can make us eat more of these sugary foods, starchy foods, mga yung mga processed food, like so maraming ganon, which can lead to weight gain because of the secretion of the hormones, which would make us eat more when we lack sleep. So very important to remember is we need to get adequate rest and sleep. Physical exercise is very important, and definitely we should love ourselves, take good care of ourselves, do the things that which make us feel good and happy, and remain socially connected despite the physical distancing.
Okay.
Okay.
Pareho lang palang dopamine levels ng ng eating tsaka exercising. Alam ko na yung
Okay yun.
easy choice.
Na-exercise ko. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
maraming salamat
So
po.
we have a lot of those neurotransmitters, and it's very important. Now we boost the levels through natural means.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
ma'am. Dr. Joan Rifareal from the Philippine Psychiatric Association. Tama, no?
Psychiatric.
Yes po. Thank you po.
Yes,
Maraming
thank you for
salamat po.
joining us tonight.
Good night. Thank you po. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay.
Good night. So, ayan, kaya
Okay.
Diba?
ako ng chocolate.
No-brainer yun. Exercise
Huwag na magkakape, huwag na magkakape. Gabi
Hindi
na.
paggabi lang, paggabi, you drink a lot of Chinese tea.
Pero yung ibang tao talaga kailangan ng kape kahit sa gabi.
Green tea, Chinese tea. Very healthy. Kaya
Okay.
makakabuhay ng mga Japanese.
Okay.
Okay, it's a weekend.
Okay.
It's a weekend. So let's get our dopamine fix.
Enough sleep. Enough sleep.
No, eat some more. That's what I meant.
Oo nga.
Okay, that
Okay.
will be all for this weekend edition of The Cheese. We hope we'll discuss it. We'll keep the conversation going. I'm Edling Alpha News.
I'm Mami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star.
I'm Robbie Alampay. We are One News.